Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
Hear me?
Welcome to the Tales of Music and Film podcast. My name is Christian Taylor, and thank you for clicking on today's episode. Now, we are in for a roller coaster on this one. So, this is going to be the first time since Eastern where I have two guests at the same time. So, this is going to be very interesting. I have my two accomplices, if you will, with me. I mentioned their names before when I told you that they were my allies. The three of us went to Flashback Weekend together to the Flashback Weekend convention in Rosemont, Illinois, and we had an absolute blast. It was a very chaotic trip a little bit, to say the least, but we had a great time. And what's super funny is that we get along so well. We're like 40 minutes late to starting this. We kept getting distracted talking about stuff, so we're finally getting things underway, so I'm very curious to see how this recording is going to go. So I am going to let them introduce themselves. Would you like to go first, sir?
Sure. I'm Billy.
Nice to meet you, Billy. Thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for accepting my invitation. And what's your name?
I'm Brady, and I would say accomplice is a little too friendly there. More like unwilling victims here.
Yeah.
You know?
No, survivors. Yeah. We survived Leatherface, Pearl, all the crazy characters.
Like, we saw them all. Like, dude, Wednesday Addams, I saw a guy wearing a pig mask carrying a chainsaw around. Like, there were all kinds of creatures and murderers at that convention.
Are you sure you just didn't go to Walmart?
We just go to Walmart. Yeah, maybe that was the possibility too. But yeah, there were a lot of horrors that weekend, but we survived. Even going to the top floor of a building when I have big fear of heights. And the elevator that we rode was all see-through glass, so that was lovely. So yeah, it was a great trip. We had a great time. And it was Billy's first time getting to go to a Comic-Con. And it was so funny seeing all of his reactions. Like, dude, this is so cool. Like, he showed all the emotions that I had when I went to my first one. Like, that whole trip was, like, the three of us, I think we'd all say we had fun, right? Like,
oh yeah, it was really cool, and it wasn't as chaotic as I expected. It was actually very chill.
Yeah, it was great. And I think the best part was, like, you literally got to chat with film composer Alan Howarth, like, at the after party. He's just out there at a table drinking. You just walk over, you chat with him for a little bit. And I remember, he puts you in a headlock, and I'm sitting there taking a picture. He just goes, "Your friend's dying, hurry up."
Yeah.
Like, dude, that was hilarious. Like, Alan's awesome. Like, I love Alan.
And then we had, what was that? It was like 11:30, we ran to McDonald's.
Oh,
yeah, and then Brady...
10:30 p.m., yeah.
Yeah, then Brady had the grand idea after the convention was over with to go on this Lord of the Rings adventure through the streets of Rosemont, just walking down the street to a McDonald's.
It was like 3 blocks, okay?
Yeah, it was just
It wasn't like a giant 3-book trilogy there.
I was disappointed, though. We didn't meet any orcs, any dwarves.
Yeah, there was so much that could have been seen, but yeah, it was alright. The trip was still cool, though, nonetheless. I had a McChicken, so it was all worth it for that long walk. That was great, but... yeah, I'm actually thinking sometime I would love for the three of us to do a deeper dive, because I want to talk about Flashback Weekend in like more detail, because that convention, in my opinion, is like one of the greatest conventions on this planet. And I think it'd be a great recording sometime for the three of us to just talk about that the whole time. So we were just scratching the surface on that. Like there's all kinds of stories that we could share with you about that, but we'll definitely might have to save that topic for another time. So when I was talking with you guys, getting you here to record this recording together, I was trying to think of what could we talk about. And I was thinking back, during the 3-hour drive up there, what was the one thing we talked about the most more than anything else? I feel like it was superhero stuff. More particularly, it was the new Wolverine and Deadpool film, which we all three of us were fanboying hard over it the whole way up there. And Brady, you even bought yourself a poster, like, at the convention.
I did, yeah. I bought myself a poster. I would say Wolverine and Deadpool was the very much the main thing we talked about, except for maybe the hour rant I went on about Wanda Maximoff. But that's a story. For
That's a different topic.
So we got this guy that's normally quiet.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, here's an hour-long defense of Wanda. We thought we were in court, and I was going to plead guilty.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
So, a little side note, folks. So, what happened was, we were just having a polite conversation in the van all the way up to Rosemont, and we were talking about a ton of Marvel films, and I said one little negative comment about the WandaVision show about how I thought Wanda was more of the main villain. And then Brady proceeds to go on this what felt like an hour-long rant, just defending Wanda. Like, in Billy's words, it literally felt like he was this, like, defense attorney. Like, Wanda's on the stand right now, then Brady's just there in his tuxedo, just ranting to everybody in the courtroom, she's not the villain.
Okay, it was more like 45 minutes, but
okay, 45, will be nice.
Like I said, that's another story for a whole another video.
By the way,
that will be nice.
You won that case. I think Wanda won $1 million.
You won the court case with flying colors. You convinced me, Brady. You convinced me.
But I think we're here to talk about two other very important heroes.
Yeah, we're gonna. I figured, why not we talk about Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine, which is, in my opinion, one of the best films of this year. Like, I'm actually thinking of doing a recording on, like, New Year's Eve this year. It'll be the last episode for this year. And I was thinking, I want to do, like, a top 5 films of 2024. Like, I want to do that so badly. This film is going on that list. I think it's going up. It's going on the list 100%. Like, I think this, along with, like, Alien Romulus, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, like, those are some of the best films I think of this year.
What if we do like a New Year's Eve party and we do that where we each share like our top 5 picks?
Yeah, like that would be awesome. Like that would be a good little like back and forth. Like, what do you think was a good film of this year, kind of thing? Like that'd be awesome. But you can like take turns because I'm telling you, there was a lot of good stuff this year. Like Dune Part 2, I really enjoyed. You have Beetlejuice on the way. We still have stuff yet to see. It's not over yet. It's so far this year's been killer for good movies, and one of them is Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, fellas, I gotta tell you, the anticipation, like, I followed this movie for 2 straight years since it was announced.
Really?
Yeah, it was announced back in 22, I'm pretty sure, at a convention. It was this small little teaser of Ryan Reynolds just sitting in a living room. He's just like, so you want to outdo Deadpool 3? Well, we don't really have anything yet. We have one thing. Then Hugh Jackman just walks by, walking up the stairs. Hey, Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time? Yeah, sure, Ryan. And then that's it. Then we just hear, and I will always love you. And then we see the logo for Deadpool and Wolverine, and then we see the Wolverine claws, and it scratches the Deadpool logo. And that's all we had for 2 years until the first trailers came out for it. And when we finally got to see Hugh Jackman after almost a quarter of a century when he was first seen as Wolverine in 2000, we finally got to see him in the classic costume. That alone had me so excited. Like, what did you guys think? Like, did you guys watch the trailers for this?
I mean, I watched bits and pieces of the trailer. I followed a lot of the social media aspect of it, seeing behind-the-scenes films that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman had posted throughout the thing.
Yeah, I only watched the first 2 trailers, and then I just ended it there. And I actually remember, I actually thought that the due date for this was going to be pushed because remember the writer's strike that was going on?
It was insane.
Yeah, but during that time, all films are put on hold. So I'm wondering is this going to be pushed to next year? But then during that time, I actually got to see behind the scenes footage of them filming that scene when they were fighting in the desert with the smashed up 20th Century Fox. I got to see a little bit of footage from that, and that was cool. So, Billy, before we go any further, I'd like to hear your input. What was your following on this? Did you watch any of the trailers or anything?
So, there was a trailer that played at the theater when I was going to see different movies. Other than that, I was trying to go in kind of blind where I was trying to avoid as much trailers. And then on social media, if I saw anything, say Deadpool Wolverine, I just quickly scrolled past it because I didn't want to really know. Heck, they said the last trailer showed that X-23 was coming back, and I didn't even know that. So I was really shocked to find that X-23 was. I was trying to avoid any sort of spoilers because I wanted to go in completely surprised by everything.
Yeah, you see, it's funny you say that because for me, like me and my best friend Jonathan, you guys all know Jonathan, he's on the show a couple of times. So him and I both have this rule, like he taught me this. There's a lot of trailers that come out nowadays where they just reveal too much.
Well, then there's also the aspect of shows, there's trailers that don't reveal or they edit stuff like in it. So, I mean, trailers come from different standpoints. Like, if we were to compare an older movie like Avengers Infinity War, how they had Hulk throughout the trailer of it, but turns out that he was not there at all. Turns out to be Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster suit.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they're giving you like a false, like you think that's how it's, like they're messing with the footage a little bit to make it look like. So yeah, in that aspect, yeah, I can definitely see that. But
and Marvel's been known to do that with different films and stuff like that to try and hide, even though they want to show you as big of things as possible, they've usually hid their trailers pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Jonathan and I both have this rule where we'll watch like the first 2 trailers for something, and then we don't watch anything else they release.
So I was going to say, the smaller studios or a new IP, I understand trying to entice the fans to come see what you're putting out there in the theaters. But when you're a big name like Deadpool and Wolverine, you don't have to put a lot of big spoilery trailers because people see Deadpool and Wolverine, they're going to go. So I think, with what he said, piggybacking off that a little bit, I think sometimes less is more on the trailers. And if you're going to show stuff, a lot of times they'll show stuff that actually isn't even in the film, or it's edited in a way to where it's showing you very brief clips. Like, I felt like Infinity War and Endgame did a good job of not giving us too much. Because everyone left Infinity War in shock.
Because they lost. You thought they were going to be, the winners yet again, but no, they got their butts kicked. Like they lost miserably.
Yeah, I thought Thor had him in the end there.
Yeah. So it was kind of like the trailers really did make it feel like they were going to win, but it was like a plot twist. Oh, they lost, you know? So yeah, in that aspect, I definitely can see, like, not all trailers reveal too much, but I still kind of follow that rule of just watching the first couple. But I gotta tell you, dude, like, I didn't even need to see any of the trailers. Hugh Jackman coming back, that sold me. I don't care how bad the plot. If it was a bad movie, I still would have liked it regardless, because I finally got to see Hugh in the classic costume. I've been waiting for this since I was a teenager.
I mean, we'll get to the negative parts of the film and stuff like that. Like, in my personal opinion, I am aware of their looks that they're giving me right now. Of saying there's negative parts to this film.
Well, there is. There's going to be a few things. Like, nothing is perfect, but go ahead. Yeah.
I was about to say this. Don't get me wrong. Deadpool is probably one of my top 10, if not 5 superheroes in any Marvel franchise, anything. But yeah, there are some negative points to it, but we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah, we'll get into that as we progress. But I was kind of wanting to hear you guys' insight on what your following was with this. But the minute Hugh was announced to be coming back, like, to tell you the truth, like, I really thought that he was done, because I went to the theater to see Logan, and like, dude, like, his story, that ending was so perfect. Like, it was great. So I was excited, but I was a little worried, like, are they going to ruin Logan's ending here? Like, I was kind of worried about that for a little bit after it was announced that he was coming back. But once the first trailer came out telling us, okay, this is a different Wolverine from a different timeline, that kind of fixed everything. Like, okay, this is just a different one. Our Logan's dead, but this is just a variant. Like, that kind of fixed everything. Like, what was your guys' takes, like, on that?
Well, in my personal opinion, I knew if they had ever asked him again, he probably would have come back, because Hugh Jackman had stated in an interview whenever he had done the film The Greatest Showman. They had asked him if he'd ever reprise his role as Wolverine, and what he had stated was he would only do it if he was in a Marvel Disney-related film, to where it was with the main franchise of it.
Yeah, I remember hearing. I didn't see the interview, but I've heard of his response. I knew that was his reply. But, dude, I gotta be honest. Like, this movie, I'm honestly still shocked that they were allowed to make this. Like, this is Disney we're talking about. Like, the minute Disney bought Fox, I thought that it was over. Like, there was a small couple years there. I thought that we were never going to get a third Deadpool film. Like, there is no way that Disney is going to let, that kind of profanity and inappropriate humor make its way into one of their films. There's just no way. I thought it would be like some kind of PG-13 kind of thing. Like, it would still be kind of funny, but not as good as the first two. I was worried about that for a little bit.
Which, I mean, there was a debate about that at one point that Ryan Reynolds actually had with Disney, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, couldn't quote me on that, but I believe he had actually said something about not actually making the film unless they agreed to make it an R rating, so that he would have full reign of this.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
older Disney movies, you've seen that they don't age very well. Some don't.
Yeah, some don't. Yeah, not really. But it's funny. Me and my best friend Jonathan were talking about this. Apparently, the minute Hugh Jackman announced that he would come back as Wolverine, I heard Disney was kind of like, okay, you guys do whatever you want. Once they knew Hugh was coming back, they gave the team full reign to do whatever they wanted. I'm so happy they did that. You can tell, I don't know. I think, okay, guys, so I got a question for you. Do you think this was the most, like, R-rated one out of the three movies? Like, when it comes to, like, the violence, the jokes, and all that, I think this one had the most, how do you say it? The most inappropriate stuff, maybe, compared to the first two? Or do you think the previous ones were more... Like, what do you think on that?
All right. So I'll answer both your questions because you were talking about Logan.
Yeah.
So first, I'll give you my thoughts on that. My concern was he is the hesitant hero the whole time.
Yeah.
And he is a hero, but he doesn't see himself that way. So that journey of the hesitant hero finally makes the ultimate sacrifice in order to guarantee a future for kids. So once I heard he was in the MCU, I thought, okay, my number one was Iron Man before this. Afterwards, Wolverine's my number one hero in the MCU. I've been with him the longest, right? Like,
I've
been around him for a long time. As far as the back and forth, like, violence, I think it just goes to the comfortability of the friendship between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Like, if you saw the interviews they were doing, is it Hot Ones?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
They give each other so much crap. Because Ryan goes, Hugh, I've always been there for you. And you kind of send me a card every now and then. He goes, yeah, I try. And just their friendship. But it definitely took it to the next level. But I think it balanced because you had the jokes, but then you also had that emotional heaviness from Wolverine's side. So I think that made for a really good film because of their friendship and then the balance. Deadpool's making all the jokes. Wolverine has all the emotional stories going on, and I think it balanced.
Which, if you look back on a lot of the comic standpoints of Wolverine and Deadpool, they've always had that kind of dynamic with each other. Wolverine being always the more serious and more ruthless character, to say the least, and Deadpool being, as his title used to be called, the Merc with Mouth, which now goes to Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, Spider-Man's kind of dethroned him a little bit with that name.
But he's always there with the one-liners, with the banter of that makes no sense or is not really appropriate for the moment.
Yeah.
But going on the topic of with Logan and stuff like that, I mean, I could have seen eventually once Disney started doing the Marvel multiverse, how they went from the MCU being the Marvel Cinematic Universe to the MCM, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. I could see a world where Hugh Jackman came back to reprise his role here, being a different variant of that.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And I gotta be honest, you guys made a nice little mention about, I think when you mentioned, the friendship and the emotion of this picture, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like compared to the first two films, I think Deadpool is at his most vulnerable in this one. I really think so. Maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that because if you think about it, the first movie was about him, his origin story. Him getting his powers, him running away from his wife because he's afraid that she won't accept him for what he looks like. The second film is him getting over his wife's death.
Yeah.
And then the third film, he goes through all of that, only to find out that he has been rejected by a bunch of superhero teams. he's been divorced by his wife. He now works at a dead-end car sales job, where he's hung up his suit and has stopped doing this. So it's one of those things of he's at his lowest point. I mean, he's had a lot of lows. I mean, his regenerative powers are literally just fighting against cancer, a constant battle.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that one. But I mean, the scene that made me ask that question is like when Wolverine goes on that rant telling him like, no wonder the Avengers or X-Men didn't pick you. Like, you're a low-life nobody. You know, he's, and like, after his long monologue was over, like, you couldn't even save a relationship with a goddamn stripper, you know, like, and then like, he actually, like Deadpool was left speechless. Name anyone else who could do that to him. Like, he just sat there and told us, like, the silence spoke more for me than the amount of words ever did. Like, he got him, dude. Like, he got him in that, like, that whole scene.
Deadpool does what a lot of people do. I've done it too. You use humor as kind of like a, what do they call it?
A coping defense mechanism.
And so he's really cracking the jokes and everything, but underneath it all, in this film, he actually sees that he has something worth fighting for.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
I mean, we see that, like I said, going back to the comics, we see that with Deadpool. As much as he is a merc with his mouth, as much as he chokes, he also, in some of the comics, he's a family man. Sometimes he goes on adventures to actually save people, even though it's in some of the oddest ways possible. I believe one of the stories was about Deadpool's actual death being with his daughter, who is like in her 90s or something like that, is dying. And what he does is he goes to the end of the universe so he can actually die with her, so that way he's not alone again. Because his regeneration doesn't allow him to actually die.
Okay. Because you guys know way more about... I haven't read one hero comic in my life, aside from some of the Batman comics, so I know nothing about like MCU comics, so you guys know way more about that than I do.
Rewatching the first film recently, I forgot how sad that was. Like, all the torture he went through and everything he went through in order to become Deadpool. Like, it really was emotionally heavy at the beginning. And then, well, at the beginning it was funny, and then you actually see what happened to him. He went through hell in that first movie.
Yeah, he really did. Like, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but...
I mean, we see a comparison, if we look at his origin story, to a less popular film that Hugh Jackman started with his Wolverine character, the Wolverine.
Yeah.
Where we actually did, the first time, seeing Ryan Reynolds play with, as in his role of Deadpool.
Well, Wolverine Origins. Yeah,
yes.
The Wolverine was the 2013.
That was a good one. Right. That was the good one.
Yeah, Wolverine Origins, however, boy.
Yes.
Dude,
it's a less popular film, but we've seen the same similar kind of backstory with that of him. We saw his torture of getting the adamantine put inside of his bodies, them taking all these children and basically splicing all of their mutant abilities into quote-unquote Deadpool's body that he had at the end of the movie. And then afterwards we saw him lose every one of his memories.
Yeah, because he got a bullet that wiped away his memory and all. Now, Wolverine Origins is a whole can of worms that could be an hour-long session in of itself, just ripping that film apart.
Was that script found in a box of cereal or something? And
yeah,
the lights were off, and they just said, "Here we go."
Yeah, it's got a lot of problems.
If you look at it side by side, it's a similar comparison of their origin stories. Both of them went through torture to have the powers that they have now.
Yeah, exactly.
Both of them kind of coped with it in a different way.
And I think that's why they're both good characters, is because they're relatable, because everybody goes through stuff in life, and I think that's why I actually like both of them. But I like Wolverine more because he has more of the serious side to him at times. But I really like both characters because of the journey they've been on.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, my favorite part, though, of the journey was, like, I feel like this is, like, a prime example of, like, enemies to friends kind of thing. Because when they first, like, dude... I think my favorite portion of this movie was definitely the first half, because, like...
The Honda Odyssey.
Yeah, get in the effing car. He's sitting there ranting, no, we can't take this vehicle has this problem, get in the effing car. And he's get in. It was just so funny. Like, these two really hate each other. Well, I mean, Deadpool was probably fanboying hard over finally meeting Wolverine, and he wants nothing to do with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that first hour, they were really, I think, enemies for that first hour of the film.
They were roasting the hell out of each other.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And not just that, they were beating the hell out of each other as well.
I'm going to fight you now.
Which is a very good dynamic to actually be able to have between two characters, because if usually when we get characters like that, we see a fight scene, but it's usually done in the arguments over and about, I don't know, 5 minutes at most. Right. And it's usually a one-time scene, but through this movie, we're going to see it multiple times because of how these characters are. They're regeneration factors of where neither of them could have killed each other.
Yeah, and it's just so funny to watch these two just keep going at each other, and none of them are dying. Just blood. Like, my favorite scene in this entire film was when they got into that fight in the van, where I'm gonna fight you now. Oh, are you? Boom! And then, like, you son of a... grabs his head, starts whacking it against the radio, and they just start fighting. Then the entire inside of the van is covered in blood.
I think one of my favorite scenes was when you actually see Wolverine reunite with X-23. I'm like, okay, I want more of this on screen. I want to see them take this down the road.
Dude,
well, I didn't see it as that much of an important. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love X-23. It was cool. But, like, coming back to the point of, I guess, a negative topic. Like, I love this movie, don't get me wrong, but I've seen more negatives than these two actually did with it. Being I am a very big Marvel fan, seeing a lot of the negatives to it, but also seeing a lot of the positives to it. Because X-23, yes, great character.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see her in more movies.
Yeah,
but
the actress who plays her, she's amazing.
I loved her dynamic with Logan, but the Logan's dynamic with her wasn't the same as what could have been, because she's got this whole other perception of who this man is.
Right.
Which, granted, yes, she tells him who this is, and she gets him to understand and eventually come to the fight with them to help them. But it didn't have the same dynamic as Old Man Logan did with X-23.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean,
bringing him back. These are two different Logans.
They're completely different. Like, you have, like, Old Man, like, the Wolverine variant in Logan, like this, that was the most tortured Logan, I think, out of all the others that we've seen. Because, see, some fans make the argument that Logan isn't connected to, like, Days of Future Past, the Wolverine, but I think it is, because we get a scene, like, you see the samurai sword that was gifted to him in his room in Logan from the Wolverine, so I think they're connected. Because another little detail about Logan was that he died the same way that girl told him he would die in the Wolverine, where you died holding your heart in your hand, and that was holding Laura's hand when he died.
Well, I mean, if we're comparing that, saying that's the most tortured Logan, I actually would say that I would possibly not be the truth. The Logan that the Wolverine that is in Deadpool versus Wolverine, I would argue it is the most traumatized Wolverine. Is the most broken, because he's at that point in time he's still very young compared to Old Man Logan, but he's already lost everybody he knows and loves in his life. The entire, I believe they had stated that the X-Men's mansion was blown up. All of them had died by a specific cause a mistake he made that caused everybody to be killed.
And I think
early in his life.
Yeah, and he actually walked off when they were calling his name. He just walked away instead of, like, helping them. Yeah.
Right. And I think what it is he's afraid to get close to anybody again because he feels like he let them down. So actually my favorite scene probably towards the end is whenever he's going to leave and Deadpool's like, no, come with me. And he introduces everyone to him.
Yeah, and
that was really cool.
And he has a new... Yeah, I enjoyed that scene a lot, but... Yeah, Brady, tiptoeing back to what you were saying, I guess, yeah, I think in the long run you're right, but I feel like, you see, with Logan, it's like, you know, like, this man's... I think, if we're talking that movie, I think that Wolverine was alive for, like, almost 300 years or something.
Yeah.
Because that movie takes place in 2029, you know, so by that point, he's got to be pushing, like, 300 years tops.
Oh, yes, he's fought in both World Wars, which we've seen in a lot of the old flashbacks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the reason I say that X-23 didn't have the same relationship with Wolverine as she did with Old Man Logan is because, like I said, there wasn't as much time, I guess would be the right word for it, to get that kind of connection to it. It was more of Wolverine. It was more of a leading cause of she was almost like the what's that? Can't think of a better phrase except for the final nail in the coffin of him, or the straw that breaks the camel's back. The one that actually caused him to finally figure it out, because throughout the entire movie, he's slowly building up to forgiving himself, possibly coming to help them, but she is that final push that he needed.
Yeah. That's a good way
He needed that kick it in the butt.
Yeah, and she kind of did that for him, I would say, in Logan, because remember in Logan, like, he's lost everybody. All he has left is Charles, and he's slowly dying from his Alzheimer's disease.
That was a very good movie.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a superhero film, you can enjoy that movie.
Well, like, that film, I would argue, I would say Logan's kind of more of like a modern science fiction western. It had more of that vibe. It didn't really feel like a superhero film to me, not necessarily.
No, it felt like a...
But in that film...
I saw it more as a post... what's the
I saw
word?
it
Post-apocalyptic.
Post-apocalyptic. What's the word? It's dystopian future.
Dystopian future, yeah.
Version of the X-Men.
Because, mutants have been dying for the last 25 years. They're, like, pretty much extinct almost at that point. So you gotta remember, that Logan went through straight hell. Like, he lost everybody. His last family member is dying slowly. He's slowly dying because his adamantium skeleton, along with, there was some theories that he was poisoning himself with alcohol because...
Yes, I believe
we talked about this.
You did, and I
there was a recent theory that back in some of the papers and stuff like that during the during the Logan movie, that they had used something like a specific pesticide or something like that in corn that had slowly been killing the mutant gene in children and stuff like that. So what happened was, if you look at Logan through the entire movie, he's sitting. What is he drinking? He's drinking whiskey
all the time.
Yes,
yeah,
and
all
corn
the time
is a main ingredient in that. So what the theory is that the corn, the pesticide inside of it, was slowly killing his mutant gene. So his regeneration factor that had been keeping him alive through his adamantine bones and his claws and everything like that is slowly deteriorating because the adamantine in his body is not part of his mutant ability.
No, it's an unnatural
additive that has been added to him because of his regeneration. But as that's slowly dying, the adamantine is poisoning him inside as well as killing him because it's not supposed to be in his body. Because like we see him struggle to get his claws even to extend anymore.
Out of his hands.
Yes.
And then also his wounds take forever to heal.
Which wouldn't be the case because his regeneration... He's lived, like you said, he's lived for 300 years and didn't look like he had aged a bit. But then all of a sudden, he looks like he's aged like 60 years within just what?
Like a decade maybe or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you say, 2029?
2029, yeah.
Look, he's aged like 60 years in a decade. So that being the case, it's slowly killing his regeneration factor, making him age. His body isn't processing that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like that one, like he's in straight like just torture at this point. Like I think this man's been wanting to die for like decades. Like we even find out that he had an adamantium bullet, that Caliban is like, you plan on blowing your brains out, are you?
I think the most hopeful we've ever seen Wolverine was at the end of Days of Futures Past, whenever he looks at Charles and he goes, "Welcome back," and he goes, What happened? Because the history I know is way different.
Yeah.
So he's like going to catch him up. So I really liked that ending. But every Logan, it seems like he's tortured. He's been through hell.
Oh yeah. Well, the reason he seemed so happy in that is because the woman that he loved was back alive, Jean Grey.
Right.
Yeah, she was back from the dead.
So
was
Scott.
Like everything was back.
Yes.
See, with Days of Future Past, a little side note here. So the guy who directed the first two X-Men and then X-Men United, he directed Days of Future Past. He was going to direct Last Stand, but he dropped out of it to direct Superman 2.
Yes.
And as we all know, Last Stand wasn't exactly well received with the fan base because they killed off a lot of characters for literally no reason.
Well, I mean, if you, like I said, with the comics and stuff like that, Jean Grey is very unstable as a character.
Yes.
She's always been like that in every type of media she's ever been in, and every universe and stuff like that she's ever played in. Comics, multiverse, everything like that, she's always been an unstable character. But I feel as much as I love talking about this, I feel like we're getting off topic of the Deadpool and Wolverine thing.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, just a side note. So that's the reason why 3 was a lot different, because the guy who directed Days of Future Past was basically him putting things back to how they were in the first 2 movies. Like, he fixed the damage that Last Stand caused. That was, I think, the main plot of that movie, was repairing the damage, but it didn't matter anyway because, they thought that, it's kind of funny. Someone brought up a theory that the timeline repaired itself because, yes, they prevented that war from ever happening. Everybody's back alive. But when Logan gets back to the present, that's when Xavier starts getting his Alzheimer's, and then the X-Men start dying out. Like, mutants start dying out because of the corn thing. So, because Logan talked with younger Beast saying that he was kind of worried, okay, if you fix this, I think the timeline is still going to find a way to
recorrect itself.
Recorrect itself. So it basically did. So sadly, in a way, Days of Future Past was all for nothing. If you think about it,
kind of like how they've what's the word I'm looking for? Fixed points in history, or what did the Spider-Verse call it? Canon events.
Canon events. Like, you can't stop this. Like,
No.
It's going to happen no matter what you do.
Right.
So that's what people are saying. Is a lot of people were trying to say that Logan was entirely its own thing, like it wasn't connected, like it was a different universe Logan. But I think all the evidence is there to say this is the same Charles and Logan from Days of Future Past. I think all the evidence is there. But anyway, I think it's a good thing though that we're talking about all these different films because I didn't realize this until the end of Deadpool and Wolverine, was that this movie was really the epilogue for the Fox series of X-Men.
Yeah, I agree.
It was basically them wrapping it up. It was like the grand finale homage. But go ahead.
I think I said to you guys and a few of my other friends, this was the No Way Home for the Fox era fan base.
It is.
It really was.
It was.
It was a goodbye, and we'll see you later, like next chapters, because we don't know for sure where some of these characters that made a return are going to go, because some of these returns, holy crap.
There were a lot of people, even in the background. Like, did you notice they had the girl with all the claws coming out of her fingers?
Oh, yes, from
X-Men 2.
I almost
They had what was his name? The Blob was actually in it. I didn't even notice until the credits. Yes, he was the one that was actually operating the door.
See, it happened so quick you would have to pause it. Here's the thing.
It's one of those things. It's a quick, instantaneous. Like, you'd have to pause it to notice.
I was not wearing brown pants like Deadpool says you should do.
Oh, okay.
When Wesley Snipes shows up on screen, I was like, what is happening right now? That was the coolest thing.
And then you have Jennifer, what's her name? Gardner as Elektra.
I've never seen that film.
I haven't seen him. Like, I have not seen the Deadpool. I did not see the Daredevil film where she was Elektra or her spinoff.
But I feel like the best cameo here that was everybody was the most shocked and happiest about was Chris Evans.
As Torch,
as the Human Torch.
Yeah, that was a nice little how would you say it? A little twist. Because I think they fooled everybody into thinking that he was a Captain America variant.
I was fooled.
I
was not. I'm not going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, I'm smart." No, I was fooled. I was
100% convinced it was definitely Captain America.
I'm like, I recognize that voice. I'm like, wait a minute, that's America's voice right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's America's. Yeah.
As like the quote.
Booty. That's America's booty.
Dude, I think it's so. Did you notice like how much Deadpool was fanboying over Captain America? Remember he sees him on
He's gonna say it. He's gonna say it.
Flame on.
Wait, what? Yeah, that was awesome.
But the thing I will say about this, I was able to be a kid again, turn off my brain, and just enjoy a film. And I think. They need to do this more. Entertain your fans. They showed up for this. Give it to them.
Yeah, exactly.
I would 100% agree with that. But that's where I feel like the negative aspect of it.
Can you get into that? Because I am curious.
Okay,
to hear
yeah,
what negative? Because there's always some.
Okay, so yeah, this is a good segue here. So, have you guys both got a chance to talk favorite moments? I want to make sure the favorite moments are out.
We have the fight in the
van. That was mine. And your favorite was
the introduction of
X-23.
Right?
Just seeing her back, and then let me ask you this question, then we'll move on. If Marvel came out tomorrow and said, "All right, guys, we got 2 new films: Spider-Man and Deadpool, Wolverine X-23,"
I would watch both of them.
Oh yeah,
I'd be so excited for both.
I would watch, dude. After Logan, I spent years like, guys, how have you not done an X-23 spin-off with her yet? Everybody keeps like years. Okay, Hugh Jackman has supposedly hung up the claws. Who's gonna replace him? X-23.
We don't need another Wolverine. If Hugh Jackman was said, "I'm not coming back," okay, instead of doing a new Wolverine, let's just go to X-23.
Yeah, I have her take over. Like, she's perfect. Like, dude, the actress, she's perfect. Like, holy cow, she's amazing. Like, she was so perfect. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite aspects of this film was getting to see her again.
Such little screen time, but such a big impact.
Exactly. She barely had, the fact that we're talking about her this much, right? And the fact she had like maybe, I would add up 20 minutes. At least. If that. And that's it.
I think just there were so many favorite moments. It's hard to like say this was the standout moment. I kind of want to rewatch it and like reevaluate that. But there was just so much, like going to the, what do they call it? The
Phantom Zone.
I forget what they called it. Where the other world, basically, where they go in and they meet Xavier's twin.
Basically
where they're forgotten.
TVA. It was.
Oh yeah, it's the Wasteland.
Yes, the Wasteland.
The Wasteland. Oh yeah, the Phantom Zone. That's from
DC.
That's DC.
I love that because seeing like this wasteland and everything. It was just really incredible to see them
do
that.
Which was a very good thing that they actually continued with something like that, bringing that over from Loki, from the Loki series and the TVA and stuff like that. Because that tells us that, yes, it gives us a better connection to it being transitioned from Sony Marvel to Disney Marvel.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, so... views. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so now that you've all talked, I think, Brady, have you gotten to talk about favorite stuff?
Definitely. Yeah, I think so. I didn't, there was a lot of scenes. I don't even know if I could choose my favorite moments in it. Like I said, there's a lot of good things about the movie and there's a few bad things.
Okay, yeah. So let's get into that for a second. So honestly, now the first thing, this is the question I've had in the back of my mind. Do you guys think this movie was too fan servicey?
Okay, I'm going to say no because somebody brought up the point is there weren't cameos. They were called surprise, what do you call them? Surprise cast members where they actually are there. They serve a purpose.
They serve a purpose.
Just thrown and gone. They actually were there, especially the heroes. They're there for a purpose. So I like that they didn't just say, hey, look who we've got, and then they go away. They actually added to the film. And like Peter coming in was just hilarious that every Deadpool loves Peter and they just stop fighting because Peter shows up. And then Dogpool.
Yeah, and Deadpool.
Like to me, yes, it was fan service, but it wasn't to the point where I was annoyed by it. It wasn't like, here, look who we have. They actually were there for a little bit of screen time.
Yeah, and I think it harkens back. They were just trying to, give homage. Yeah, it's like, I actually liked. See, for me, I don't think the movie was too fan servicey. For me, I thought it was very nice of them to bring back some of these characters that, like, let's face it, Jennifer Gardner's Elektra, nobody remembers. Like, I'm pretty sure that was one of my favorite jokes. Like, oh yeah, you're definitely remembered. Who is she again? Because Jennifer Gardner played Elektra 20 plus years ago in the early 2000s, and both those films weren't really well received. Wesley Snipes, Blade series, I heard the first 2 were pretty good. I heard 3 was pretty bad.
Really quick, Marvel sold off Spider-Man and rights to many characters just to stay afloat. They were going to go out. And Blade was the film that kept them above water. They actually brought them to where they were profitable, and they quit selling off different character rights. So that was a really interesting thing. My friend told me. I did not know that.
Okay, so but yeah, definitely Wesley Snipes getting to come back was really cool too. I thought Blade needed some justice, So bringing them back, and then seeing Channing Tatum as
Gambit.
the movie that So there were plans to do a Gambit film, but it just kind of fell apart. It never got greenlit.
What I thought was actually the case with that. When I saw him, I seen Blade, a higher rated one, and then Elektra, somebody that was completely forgotten. And then you see Channing Tatum as Gambit, who I was like, my first thought of that was, okay, this is just a fun cameo. And then my second thought was, well, it could have possibly been a rejected movie. And that's why he says he has no memory of his life before this, or no memory of his backstory, or who his parents are.
But he was about to make a name for himself.
Yeah, and Deadpool's like, are you sure your movie just wasn't allowed to be made?
Didn't he say, they said heroes have been forgotten, and then he says, or never realized.
I never even realized.
Because he was supposed to play.
Yeah, he was supposed to get a solo film, but I think a lot of stuff just prevented that from ever happening. But anyway, I thought it was really nice that they brought in those cameos just to pay homage to those characters, because they are part of this. They are part of the Fox universe. They deserve to be recognized for their hard work, And even, having Chris Evans reminding everybody, oh, by the way, he wasn't just Captain America. He was also
his first Marvel
Human
appearance
Torch.
was the Human Torch.
And the thing is my friend thought, she was like, I thought he was going to die because he falls and smacks his nuts on the sign all the way down. I'm like, oh yeah, he's toast. And then he gets back up and you're like, okay, he's not dead.
And then he proceeds to get all of his skin ripped off of him.
I don't care if all my skin is peeled. Oh, that was the after guys, the after credit scene with him was hilarious. Although people have argued online now, because now they've shown another clip where Gambit goes back to his universe now. They argue that should have been the second post-credit scene of having Gambit return to his universe. So yes, and there's a deleted scene that we'll have to watch when it comes out. I saw it recently where Gambit does get back to his world.
Yeah, I mean, we knew those characters were alive, because right before Deadpool and Wolverine jump through the portal, you see 23 and all of them. Like, they're fine. Like, they killed everybody. Like
23 showed up at at the end scene of
she was at the table with everybody at the end, which I'm glad. She's finally got a second chance to be with her dad. It's technically not her dad, but in a way, like
what Brady said earlier about them having a different relationship. I actually want them to take that and say, okay, this relationship now, we're going to see what happens now that things have changed. I'm curious to see.
I'd be curious. Yeah, I'd be curious to see that too. So now we discussed. So I guess overall, you all have the same opinion. This had the right amount of fan service. Well, it wasn't too much.
That's where one of my things of the negative aspect of it is. Don't get me wrong. I love the fan service. As much as it's some people gripe about it, I'm one of those people. I love cameos. Cameos were one of my favorite things to point out during that. And not even just cameos, but mentions of different characters that have never appeared before, like all the Deadpool variants. I believe when we watched the movie, I pointed out like 7 or 8 of them whenever they kept appearing on screen. Deadpool, Sheeppool, Kidpool, Dogpool, all of those kind of variants. Because I've seen the comics and I've seen a bunch of those different types of variants. But the reason I think some of it was, it was good to have callbacks to it. And a lot of movies, a lot of the Marvel movies don't do that very, very well anymore. You've got just small little callbacks to somebody like giving an inspiring speech, and they're just there for all that's all they're there for. But when it came to this one, I don't think it was too bad as some of the other movies have been. What it was like you said earlier, it was their final homage of a new era, which it was giving all of those past actors who have acted in Marvel Sony movies, not just X-Men related movies, but Sony movies in general, showing all of them being transferred over to the Disney side of it, which is honestly the biggest gripe I would have with it. Is not the movies being bad at all. The negative thing that I think just makes the movie that really bums me out with the movie is this is Marvel's, the Disney version of Marvel's first introduction to crossing over all of the X-Men and all of the Sony characters to their mainstream story. Because I love Deadpool, but he's not the best character to have as a focus point for a point to where you're trying to make a very serious point and very, very. Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
Like-
Was this movie really the one to
Bring
in
into
all
Disney.
these characters?
You know what?
Yes.
I'm glad you said that because there was a thing with Kevin Feige. He said if Infinity War and Endgame were a 10 on the importance of the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine was a 9 in importance for introducing the X-Men to the MCU. So from that perspective, I actually can agree with some of that.
Because, I mean, it all was played for jokes. I mean, even though they introduced the main timeline of the main universe 616 whenever Deadpool went to try and convince the Happy to let him join the Avengers.
Why was Thor crying?
Yeah.
Why was Thor crying? We may never know.
Is that it never really links it to it. It ends with him going back to his universe, not coming into the main universe of 616, or showing anything to do with the main universe of Universe 616. What it did was, it introduced, like, them from the TVA's point of view, which, in my opinion, is almost like the only thing that really linked the two together. Because, if you think about it, if the TVA hadn't gotten involved and there was, let's say, just some random named organization out there that was in place of the TVA, this movie could have just been its own standalone Sony movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I think they didn't... the only Disney Marvel character they actually physically showed interacting with him was Happy. And that was a cut-off, like, a 3-minute scene at the beginning.
3-minute scene tops.
And every other hero that was shown on there was either related to a Sony version of the character, were from old Sony movies, or from... Yeah, none of it was related to the Disney version of it. Like, let's say, I don't know, the TVA is just an entirely, like I said, random organization. They did even that. If you hadn't known who the TVA was, if you hadn't watched Loki or anything like that, you still wouldn't have known what the TVA was, because it didn't try and bring anything from Loki into it. The most they brought from that is them saying they don't destroy severed timelines anymore, and that was the whole thing. If I'm going to destroy their timeline, that was about the only thing mentioned of the progression of Loki.
Yeah.
Actually, a question though: do you think this was sort of a, hey, we know it's been a mixed bag this phase, we're rerouting, and this is kind of like the segue movie where they're going to be expanding more on things, but this was just kind of like a brief, we need to reroute here, it's not working.
Which, I mean, would have been great for it. Honestly, this movie, how I seen it, if it had come out, like, after a more serious movie introducing, like I'm guessing how Secret War is going to be, because I believe Secret War is, in the comics at least, what it does is it brings heroes versus villains by some greater, I don't know what the being's name is, but he takes the X-Men, the Avengers, Spider-Man, and basically kidnaps all of them into a specific planet, puts them in a facility together, and he puts the villains like Doctor Doom, the Sinister Six, even some like random one-off villains like Absorption Man or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of them are spread out they're like on a specific planet, and what they are is they're forced to fight each other. And that's how the X-Men and the Avengers actually meet each other, because that, in the comics, that is their first meeting.
Okay.
Like, even they don't even think, if I remember correctly, they didn't know who Spider-Man was. Like, through the comics. And coming into Spider-Man, it would make perfect sense because Sony actually had the rights for Venom, correct? So that would have been the perfect movie to introduce all of them together. Okay. The Avengers meeting the X-Men and other random heroes from the Sony universe.
Okay.
And Sony villains and villains meeting together. But the main thing would be, they'd also be able to introduce Venom as well, because Secret War is actually the first introduction of Venom. What happened was this Spider-Man's suit got torn during one of the battles. They went into the facility, and I believe even the Fantastic Four were in there, I believe. I could be wrong, though, but one of the smarter heroes showed Spider-Man how to work the something to fix his suit. And what came out was this substance that actually molded to his body and gave him a black suit, which later on was transferred into becoming Venom in the stories.
Okay. I have one more question for
Yeah.
you. I have one more question.
Yeah.
for Ray.
Okay, so one more question, and then Ray, I'll have you wrap up what you were saying. Then I want you to take a turn talking about if you can name me just one thing that you had a criticism with about this movie.
Okay.
So go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Do you think for you, this will be a film, say 5 years down the road, you see what the future MCU is, do you think looking back on it and seeing where they went after this, maybe will you'll be able to look back on and say, actually, this is better than what I initially said, or do you think that might...
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this movie's bad at all. I love this movie. I think it'll still have the same place in my heart 5 years later as it does right now. I still love it.
Yeah.
I just feel like it could have been a next movie after something like Secret War, to where it's one of those movies to help flesh out more of what's going on in the background of this world while all of them are there. Something that gives the characters more depth and more reasons to be like, oh, now that we've introduced so-and-so in Deadpool and Wolverine, we introduce, like you said, Elektra, Blade, stuff like that. Them coming into that story now that they've introduced the main cast of the X-Men in all of Sony's films, now that they finally introduced the main cast, they can start introducing side characters. But I feel like the problem is the only main cast member that they actually linked to any of the MCU was Wolverine. The most they've maybe they've done is a small cameo of Xavier in Multiverse of Madness along with Reed Richards. That was the only smaller cameo of two major characters.
Yeah. And
Wolverine has been the only main character that was actually in a full movie related to Disney's version of Marvel. Which would have been great if they had introduced more of the main cast rather than, like I said, Elektra, which nobody ever has seen the movie. Not very many people have seen the movies or know who she is.
I really enjoyed that running joke though too. Like that was really funny.
She's one of those characters that would make sense to introduce later on as, I don't know, maybe like a secondary movie of, okay, now they've introduced Fantastic Four, the X-Men, all of these great heroes now we can start to flesh out and start to introduce Elektra, Blade, I don't know, what's the Canadian version of the Avengers,
or or how about the 2003 Hulk variant,
that
nobody
remembers. Into the Hulk variants, or
yeah. We all miss that Hulk, don't we?
So you asked me for a
so Brady did a really good job explaining his criticism. What's one thing, if you had to pick, was there anything at all that you figured maybe could have been done better, or maybe the film could have done without?
If I were to pick something that I felt like, okay, they did a good job with the hero cameos. The villain cameos of the old X-Men films deserved a little more screen time. I thought they should have added 5 to 10 more minutes. Sabretooth coming back was awesome. That same actor that played Sabretooth.
Same actor.
I felt like it was a little bit wasted that we didn't get to spend more time with the villains. What if they would have shown the villains getting their team assembled before we saw Chris Evans show up? And like they're building up like, oh, this team's gonna, and then do the fight. It just felt like they easily dominated the villains. The villains were just kind of there. That was the one criticism I had.
I agree with you 100%. Like, I was actually very disappointed where Sabretooth was killed instantly. Like, the fight lasted like
one hit.
Like, it was one hit and then that was it. I mean,
one punch or one claw.
Claw.
This is you gotta remember, this is a universe where Wolverine's already killed Sabretooth before.
Right.
So he knows all of his fighting stuff. But yes, I agree with you there. It would have been great to see, like, maybe, like, a 5-minute scene before, if that, or during the movie, to where she is, like, talking with all of the, I don't know, random villains through there.
Yeah.
Because, like I said at the beginning, Blob was in there, but you didn't even know he was there.
No, I didn't.
The most I seen with him was the credits.
Yeah,
I saw Blob, and I saw where it was listed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now that makes sense. I do recognize that character. But then again, if you haven't watched any of those movies, like, even if you have, it was kind of hard to spot specific villains in the background unless you specifically knew who that one was.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
One last criticism I have, and I'll leave it with that, is that I was a little bit confused on, like, at first at least, and you guys have helped clear up a little bit, the timeline with all the Wolverine stuff. Like, which Wolverine is this? What time? All of that. I was kind of like, okay, what has he experienced? What hasn't he? So, because after you see Days of Futures Past and all that, you think they fixed some things, and then... So I was a little bit confused as far as, like, how all that worked with the time. Maybe they could have been a little bit clearer with how, like, what this Logan had experienced, because he gives a brief, maybe later they give us more with the future Wolverine movie to kind of fill in that gap, but I felt like there were maybe some pieces missing that could have been added to this Logan's story.
Because for all we know about this Wolverine variant is that he let all the X-Men die, and he was, like, partially responsible for them dying in the first place, so he just kind of became an alcoholic and cut himself off from everybody. And so the X-Men are basically gone at this point, so he's kind of like, he as the head guy at the TVA even says, you brought me the worst, like, Wolverine variant.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought that was a good way of, like, you know, we're so used to, like, Wolverine being the top hero. How about we have a variant where this is, like, a low point one? Like, which, you know, like, that was kind of nice.
Yeah, which comes back to the point of how are they going to introduce the X-Men now into the film if this is going to be your main Logan?
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, yeah, I never thought about that.
Like,
I'd be curious to see.
Every one of the X-Men have died, and now we've gotten to know this variant of Logan. And now what we're going to expect is if he ever shows back up in a film, we're going to be expecting this variant. But for all we know, we might have to do a whole nother variant to being a whole nother one that actually has the X-Men alive. And will the X-Men be coming from a different universe? Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, because the main X-Men cast from the original films from the early 2000s, they're way too old. I mean, that was 25 years ago. I mean, like, the actress who played Jean Grey, she's, like, in her mid-60s now, I'm pretty sure.
Don't get me wrong, we have a couple people that we could come back to as they're reprising their roles, because if you think about it, Days of Future Past and stuff like that introduce their characters again, but as their younger versions. So we've got a younger version of Jean Grey. We have her from the Dark Phoenix movies, of her, well... I mean, yes, I'm not going to spoil anything.
I haven't seen that one, actually.
Yes.
That's the one I need to
watch.
watch.
I'm not going to say anything about it, but yes, we have her from that, which could be another Jean Grey. We have a younger version of Cyclops, who is there. We have a younger version of Xavier.
Bring me James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender into this, and I would be very happy.
Yeah.
Or, like, Jennifer, what's her name? Anderson, or Lawrence?
Oh, Jennifer.
Lawrence, who played
Lawrence Mystique.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right. Which she, like I said, she doesn't look like she's that old. But she can reprise her role as Mystique.
Yeah, so there are possibilities. So I guess for me, I think one criticism I had with this was that I didn't like how they threw away Deadpool's characters to the sideline. Like, Cyclops, Teenage Mutant Warhead, is that how you say her name?
Oh, Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yeah. What the shit? That name's awesome.
That was, she's cool. She's also in a lot of good stuff.
Yes. I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, I could understand Cable leaving. Yeah, he's from the future. I can understand him going back to... Domino.
Yeah, Domino.
Where is she?
Where's Domino?
I know the X-Force was still made in this universe, even though he went back in time. Oh, he saved... what was his name? I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Peter. He saved Peter, and Domino survived him anyways. But she never showed back. They never explained when she got there.
There's no mention of her at all.
Or the friend at the bar.
Or the friend at the bar. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, actually, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot.
We did get Blind Al.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
so that guy was the main point of being Deadpool's best friend in the first two movies, and there's no mention of him. There's no mention of Domino. There's no mention of Cable going back to the future.
Did Domino go just slither away?
And then also it's like, what happened to the kid? What's his name again with the fire powers?
He's going to the Y2K movie.
Oh yeah,
I think he was filming that.
Cable, Domino, Russell, and the bar guy with the glasses.
Oh yeah, I can't remember.
His name,
But he was never going to be in this because apparently him and Ryan Reynolds had a huge falling out, and the guy and the guy got into a lot of legal problems. Like he got apparently, if my memory's not messing with me, he got drunk on a train. He assaulted somebody.
Oh yeah. I mean,
like it was something like that. So he got into a lot of controversy. So he was never going to be coming back.
Domino,
for this.
though,
like,
of the ones mentioned, I think, besides Cable, obviously, Domino was really cool.
Another thing that when you mentioned the kid, I didn't actually think of Russell when my first thought. My first thought was the whole premise of Deadpool 2 at the beginning and the end credit scene. Vanessa and Deadpool were supposed to have a kid.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I was okay with that. I mean, Deadpool, I don't think now's a good time for Deadpool to be having kids, but...
Is it ever? I mean, really?
Anyway, but I was just really annoyed that all the characters didn't get more screen time. Like, I wish that...
How long was the movie?
It was like over 2... I was like...
Yes,
it was like 2 hours and...
So if they would have had it 10 to 15 minutes and given us a little bit more, some of that...
Yeah, like, because... These people we followed in the first 2 films, only to see them show up for a quick couple of scenes at the beginning, just felt like I was really hoping we could see more of them, you know?
And it wasn't just them. It was also main characters that were supposed to be in the story that you were just like, I have no clue. Like the main villain of the story, Xavier's sister, what was her name?
She was cool.
I can't even remember her name because I don't remember much of her. Yes, she was a cool villain, don't get me wrong. I loved her as a villain.
It wasn't Cassandra, was it?
No,
it was.
No, Cassandra?
Cassandra.
I think so you said? Yeah.
But the thing is, it would have been so much cooler to see her more fleshed out because unless you have read the comics and know that Xavier has a twin sister.
I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not, I don't think she's that well known.
I was going to say, I knew about
No.
this. In the comics, she's partially somewhat well known because she is Xavier's twin sister who has better powers than him, but supposedly died in the womb. In the womb as
I knew about that. I knew about that. I knew about her from the comics. But like if they had fleshed out more of her through the story, because if you think about it, the story is just mainly Deadpool and Wolverine. Which don't get me wrong, it's their movie. But during other movies you usually get a villain's perspective of it. But she's more there for the cool factor of a villain.
I would say I'll say this. As a like fun buddy film, it's an A+. It's a great film.
Oh, yes.
But whatever you do, like with any film, you look deeper in. There could have been some improvements, but overall, I'm with you. Between that, Twisters, some other films, this is one of the top movies of the year.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, when I do my top 5 films, this movie is going to be higher up on the list. I'm not going to announce what number 1 is, but this film's going on there.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Now, fellas, so we were already kind of touching upon this. I think the last question I want to ask you before we wrap this up is, now, do you think that Disney is going to take this film, because they had a streak of bad luck before this, like, just last year, every project Disney did, especially Marvel-wise, they bombed. Every single one almost.
Well,
like, really badly.
They kind of have their ups and downs, because, like...
well, they did have a lot of ups and downs.
Like,
and I think this...
Spider-Man, No Way Home... No, No Way Home.
Yeah, No Way Home. Yeah, No Way Home.
When did that one air?
That was 21.
That was 21.
That was amazing.
It feels a lot.
But last year wasn't really the best year for Disney. Like they lost a lot of money.
But the reason being is if you look at their what movies were actually supposed to be released, there is actually the latest movie that's going to be coming out for them, which I think is the new Captain America movie, the one with Falcon as Captain America. That was technically supposed to come out closer to the beginning of this year.
Oh, okay.
They've had so many projects pushed back because we were supposed to have that. We were supposed to have the Thunderbolts.
That's on the way. I've seen screenshots.
Yes, but that was supposed to actually come out like last month.
Oh, okay.
Or no, sometime in June is when it was supposed to come out. But they were supposed to be releasing tons more projects and more movies, but they canceled like 4 or 5 of them. And not just because of recent actors being in prison or controversy with that. It was because they've had to cut them for time for their other movies because they've just been so delayed with them.
And I heard Kevin Feige could not watch what they call the dailies, my friend was telling me. So he couldn't actually keep up and personally attend to every project. So there was overload. It felt like a full-time job. I'll watch 3 or 4 movies a year if they're good, but I don't also want to have to watch 6 TV shows just to keep up with the MCU.
Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
haven't finished Miss Marvel. I haven't finished season 2 of Loki.
I still gotta go back.
I haven't finished, what is it? Secret Invasion or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Secret Invasion.
Could you
Yeah,
repeat
I
your
haven't
final
finished
question?
that
It's getting
one.
late. Could you go ahead and repeat?
Yeah,
your
this is the
final
last question.
was?
So my question was that, do you think that this movie is going to show them the right direction? Do you think the movies that are going to come out after this should follow this film's example? Like, that's the thing. Like, do you think that, like, what do you think is the best? This is kind of a two-parter. Do you think the future films after this should follow this film's example? And also, what do you think Marvel should do next? Like, after this?
I think this is just more of one of those Marvel's quick, fun movies that is actually a good turnout because it's a loved movie, it's loved characters.
Yes, absolutely.
But in my opinion, I don't feel like they should follow the same direction of that because if they try to, there is not going to be as good. Because you can't have this same fun-loving conversation with characters like Captain America or Thor. You can't have these same dynamics as you do with Deadpool and Wolverine. Because every character is their own specific personality.
Mm-hmm.
Being that, you can't have a complete comedy movie with somebody like Nick Fury and Black Widow or something like that. Because they aren't highly comedic characters like you can with Deadpool. But you can't have a very extremely serious movie with a character like Deadpool. You can't have a more emotional... Well, you can, but you can't have one that doesn't have any fight scenes or anything like that with a character like Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as much as I love this movie, I don't think they should follow the same direction because you can't follow it for every single character.
Okay.
Because eventually, what's going to happen is it's going to get old. Next thing we know, we're going to have Deadpool 4, and if they continue to follow the same direction, the same take they did with this movie, when that comes out, nobody's going to want to watch it because, it's the same thing we've been getting for the last 6 or 7 movies.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
But I do agree with what they should do is keep the more of, what's the word I'm looking for? More of the hype for it with it.
Okay, I like that take, Billy. What do you think? Like, what do you think? What do you think of this two-parter?
So I think one, take the good aspects. Don't be afraid to have some fun with your films.
Oh, yeah.
And as Brady said, don't copy the formula, but let us spend time with your characters. Let us get to know who your characters really are. So if you take someone like Falcon, Sam, as Cap. I'm expecting a more serious film. Based on the trailers, I'm expecting more serious. Take your character and show us what is important to them, what are the characteristics that define them, and run with that for your film. So each superhero film feels like you're actually spending time with a different type of character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good response. And what do you think? What direction do you think Marvel should go from this film? Like, what do you think?
God, mostly I think take your time, really map out where you're going. Don't write yourself into a corner to where it has to go this way unless you're turning it that way with the villain. Because I think with our concern we said about the X-Men, don't force it to where you have to pull them from multiverse. Leave some doors open to give you some creative options. Because someone like Sam Raimi is going to come in to do it, say another Doctor Strange. You know those visual effects are going to be crazy off the wall. So allow your directors to maybe have a few options as far as
even more ambiguous.
Yeah. That's a good way to put that. Now, for me, I think that they should not. So I think they should follow the example. Like, I want them to continue this mature route with a more harder rating. Not all of them, obviously, but I want them to continue the trend of like, let's get a little more heavy. Let's start taking more risks. Because one of my major complaints with the MCU as a whole, especially like stages 1 through 4, is that I think they were way too scared of killing off characters. Because up until Endgame, like, we were not getting like all the main cast. The cast just kept getting bigger and bigger to the point I feel like there were way too many characters. Like, I think that War Machine. What's his name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Yeah, Rhodey. I think I've said this time and time again. I think he should have died in Civil War. I think they should have killed him.
I agree that killing off heroes when it's the right time. We love these heroes, yes.
Yeah.
But there is a time and place for, okay, they weren't the biggest hero. Give them their moment. Let them go owl or something.
But coming back to that of killing off characters, the problem with doing that in Marvel movies is if you do that with a big character or something like that, next thing you know, they're going to have them come back as a variant.
Yeah, there's that too.
Like they did with Infinity War, killing off Loki. They killed off Loki, and next thing we know, we have a variant that's taking his place.
Yeah.
And I love that, though, with Loki.
Oh, yes,
it works for that
100%.
character, but wait, are you trying to say, like, not every character should have to come back?
Yes, like, I just don't feel like it's, like, how they're, my personal opinion, I don't, like having Robert Downey Jr. come back as Dr. Doom being a variant.
I want to see how they do that. I want to see if it's a variant and the real Doom shows up later.
That goes back to my answer where it's just like, I want them to continue this more maturity approach. Excuse me. But I want them, because obviously right now Marvel's kind of like in this rewrite phase because Kang the Conqueror didn't work out.
Yes.
So they're basically
which is what
starting from scratch to an extent. So they're trying, okay, how do we bring audiences back? Okay, let's bring back Robert Downey Jr. But instead of Iron Man, he's playing, this new villain.
Which comes back to Billy's point of saying writing themselves into corners.
Yeah, if they approach, there's a good way to approach this. Now let's see if they can, how do you say it, stick the landing with this.
To go with your point, though, we've been with MCU for 2008.
Yeah,
so most of us that are
16
watching,
years.
We're adults now.
Yeah.
So yeah, the mature thing makes sense. They need to mature, like Harry Potter did. It got darker as it went on.
Yeah, it got way darker
MCU
the longer it went. Yeah,
could get a little bit more mature because a lot of audience members are adults now.
I don't 100% agree with that. Yes, I agree that should be some movies that are taken more serious. Like
Blade should not be PG.
No, Blade is one of those characters that takes a very serious approach. Somebody like Blade, Daredevil, Punisher, different Marvel heroes or anti-heroes like that do take serious approaches. But when you come to the main characters like Captain America and Iron Man, taking that softer approach is usually the style that it should continue to go with. Yes, you can have a darker story with Cap or something like that eventually, but you gotta think, these movies were originally made as comic book stories for kids to buy for a quarter or something like that.
Like 25, 50 cents at like the candy store or something.
And they were made for kids.
But it depends on the character.
Yes, but we've had people that, when those comics were bought like that, like 30, 40 years ago was back when that happened. So now that the cast has grown, like people of these, it's more nostalgia purposes. But if they continue to rely on just darker topics of trying to age it up, what's going to happen when, I don't know, let's say in the next, if Marvel lasts this long, say in the next 40 years, what's going to happen then? They're going to continue to try and age up to continue with their audience.
Okay, yeah.
But what's going to happen to the new generations of fans of these children that will eventually love Marvel as much as we do?
Yeah,
yeah. You can't force it if it doesn't fit.
Yeah, let's say if they took that darker approach, and let's say you were a 10-year-old, would your family let you watch these? Would you get the same enjoyment as you did watching the first Avengers movie?
Yeah.
If it was extremely darker when you were a kid?
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, you have a good point. I think, once again, make sure it fits that character. Yes, if that character's going on a darker journey, allow it, but not force it.
And I guess to kind of wrap that up of saying that, like you said with the ending of an era with the Sony, of this movie being the ending of an era with Sony, that also brings back the topic of, yes, we want these darker movies, but eventually that era's got to end for it. Because we've got to leave the path for the new generation of this. Like you said with X-23, if Logan could have died, we could have had a next thing of his children running this. We've also got to keep in mind that these softer movies aren't just made for only adults. These are made for kids who want to introduce themselves into the Marvel Universe to be fans like we are to this day.
When you said that, it made me think of what would Stan Lee want ultimately?
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes you wonder what Stan would want. Yeah, but you guys bring up really good points, and I'm actually very curious to see where Marvel's going to go from this point. But I think that's about to wrap it up on us talking about like where the MCU should go from this point. Now, what's the rating you would give Deadpool and Wolverine, fellas? Me, I would give it a 9 out of 10 for me, because for me, it doesn't really take much to please me. This film blew my expectations out of proportion. You know, like, it was everything I wanted it to be and more. So I was very pleased with the outcome. So Billy, like, what would you say? What would your rating be? Out of 10?
Even with the flaws, it's just good fun. It's hard to give it
fun.
anything. I want to say 10, but I can't. I don't know. Part of me says just give it a 9.
Yeah, because nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect, but it's damn close for
It's
what
cl-
I
yeah, for what I like.
Now you
Yeah.
guys are gonna make me feel like the negative Nancy here.
Oh, it's
saying this.
everyone's got their own opinions. You've already stated you like this
I would
movie.
say, oh yes, I love this movie, but I couldn't give it a 9. I couldn't give it an 8, maybe 7 at most.
7? That's
Seven's
good.
still good,
That's
though.
7
6 and
still.
7.
7 still
I mean, way better than an average movie. I would say a 7.5 at most, actually. Probably around that era. It's not the best movie. It's not the worst movie. It's more in the average of between an average movie and an amazing movie. This kind of sits right in the middle of.
So if you
those.
average that, that's about like an 8. We'll say for between the three of us.
But between the three,
It's about an 8. I'd say
yeah.
for between the three of us, we can kind of come to a consensus like 9, 7. Let's.
I would say 8.5 for you guys is
Yeah.
With you both giving a 9, so something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So so that's going. So yeah, very good out of 10s there. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us covering Deadpool and Wolverine. It's actually still in theaters, and if you have not seen this movie yet, I highly recommend you go watch it. It's a very good film, and just the simple fact of having Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine again, 24 years later, finally getting to see him in the classic costume was amazing, and finally getting to see these characters done right was really a dream come true. And I was very honored I got to see this movie in my lifetime. Like, when you say, fellas, like,
Oh, yeah.
I feel very fortunate that we lived in a time where we got to see this,
We're spoiled.
Yeah.
Sometime we need to talk about just all the films we've had in our lifetimes. It is crazy. This is one of those high points, and even with the criticisms, it's still you put it up against other superhero films. It's very fun.
It's fun, and that's the important thing at the end of the day of this movie is it's just a fun film that you'll have a smile on your face the whole way through.
I was laughing my butt off, especially the fight scene. Like, there are moments in the soundtrack. One line we did not mention that.
Yeah, the
music,
soundtrack,
Avril
the
Lavigne
music
in the middle of Deadpool Wolverine doesn't work for any other film. It works.
But
And
like-
then
works.
holding hands, listening to Madonna, and Invincible.
Invincible.
Yes, but like I said, we could go on and on about these
could.
for hours, but
Yeah, and this film is, dude, you should see. Just the other day, right? I watched someone put a recorder up in the theater. It was a packed room of people watching, and it was the scene where we finally see Wolverine pull on the cowl. Finally, the entire room just started going, woo, just screaming like, yes.
I need to go to those theaters. I want to go to those.
Like, oh man, that was amazing. I see. This movie is still making history as far as I'm concerned.
It's one of those movies that, like I said, we could go on talking about this for hours, but it's one of those movies you gotta see for yourself.
This recording is
sure.
not going to do this movie justice.
No.
Like, you have to see it for yourself to understand, like, where we're coming from here.
Yeah, highest grossing rated R film of all time now.
Oh yeah, it's got to be. I would not be surprised if that is the
It
case.
passed Passion of the Christ is number 1.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Almost
surprising.
1.2 billion.
Okay,
What's the highest rated actual film?
Avatar. Avatar's the
Actually,
high.
was passed.
So Avengers Endgame
Beat it
for a while, but then they re-released
Release.
Avatar again,
Oh,
and
yes.
they
cheated.
Avatar basically cheated, but yeah, and heck, even before that, Titanic was number 1 for a while.
Yep.
So yeah,
I
funny
don't
enough,
count
Cameron
Avatar as-
beat himself.
Well, dude, thanks for having us. Anytime you want us on here, it's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely, guys. Seriously,
It was a pleasure and an honor to be part of this.
yeah, I was so looking forward to getting you guys on here, and it was great to finally have 2 guests on the show again. It was fun getting an opportunity to do this again, and I can see us doing a lot more of these, like down the road,
anytime,
like 100%. So, I just want to say, guys, thank you for listening to this episode. I know it went a little longer than usual, but we just had a lot to unpack with this. This is what happens when you get 3 mega fans in the same room. We love this movie to death, and this is exactly what our conversation was like going out to Rosemont, Illinois. It was just nonstop, just talking 3 hours straight, just talking about how amazing this movie is. So. Guys, I just want to say thanks again for taking my invitation to being on here, and I'm glad you enjoyed yourselves. And you guys, both of you brought really, really good insight into this project, and I loved hearing your points of views and your opinions on this. So it was very fun getting to bounce our ideas back and forth on this. So
Yeah.
this was a very great discussion. So you just want to say adios, or?
Well, final thoughts. Basically, I like that we all have different perspectives because it kind of opens your mind up to different perspectives, and you see things that you wouldn't have saw for yourself. So it's funny how 3 people can look at the same piece of art or piece of movie and take something different based on their experience and perception of things. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So until next, actually, before we go to Brady, you want to say anything else?
And final thoughts. Like I said, this. Like I've said before, we could talk about this forever, but just us talking isn't going to do us justice. It's one of those films that you have to go watch to experience the joys and the criticisms that we've had about this movie, because everybody has different opinions on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, at the end of the day, this is just our opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So until next time, I am Christian Taylor.
Billy.
I'm Brady.
And you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.